Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are in Northern Chaos Wastes playing as the forces of the Empire against the forces of Savage Norsca. And for this match I wanted to highlight one specific unit, and that is the War Wagon with the Mortar. And this is a unit that is considered something of a meme. Many people consider it the worst unit in the Empire roster, which surprises me. The wagons in general are considered some of the worst units in the Empire roster. I think in the case of the Vanilla Wagon, that's a very fair assessment. But in the case of the Mortar Wagon, that claim has always surprised me. Because even in its original release, I didn't feel it was that bad of a unit. But I haven't played with it much since then. And I still see people, even after the multiple cost buffs it's gotten, I still see people claiming it as the worst unit in the Empire roster. And I want to give it a fair shake. I want to try it out, run it against in matches where you wouldn't run a traditional mortar, and see how much value you can get out of a unit that costs quite a bit more. It costs 50% more almost than a mortar does. You're paying 950 for a mortar with wagon versus the 650 you'd get for a normal mortar. So when you think about it, that means you can essentially get spears and a mortar for the price of a War Wagon mortar, almost. Or you can get chevrons on your mortar and then have spare change for an additional spell, perhaps, or Foe Seeker or something like that. So, or chevron, some of those on other units, something along those lines. But I figured, let's give it a shot. Let's see what we can do with the War Wagon. And so I decided to bring it here against Norsca. Norsca, I think, has a lot of light infantry. They've got a lot of vulnerable infantry to the War Wagon. They've also got dogs, units like that, against which is not a terrible unit. But it's a unit where you would never, in my opinion, traditionally bring a mortar, because Norsca's a very rush-heavy faction. They're a pretty cheap faction, so they can swarm you pretty efficiently. Defending a backline is difficult, especially defending a backline for such a niche unit as a mortar when you need artillery to deal with monsters and that sort of thing. And so I decided, let's give it a shake. This could be a fun matchup to test the War Wagon. So for my Lord, rolling with Boris. Boris, of course, has great self-sustain. He's a good all-arounder, jack-of-all-trades Lord. Not the sort of sniper that Karl is, of course, but he does bring good utility. Of course, hold the line. He's got White Cloak of Ulrich, Crush the Weak, as well as the Midland Runefang for that healing. So he's quite a beefy boy. Not the best combat stats, but against Norsca, it's good enough. And gives us some good self-sustain, allows my Jade Wizard to focus his healing on the Cav and other units. Now my front line here, completely token front line, bunch of spears, chevron up a bit, but originally I actually intended to bring spearmen with shields, and I think I probably should have done that, but it does give him a little more leadership at least, so hopefully they do hold the line a little better against the Norscan Tide. And besides that, Jade Wizard, as mentioned, down here, brought two spells on him. We've got the Flesh to Stone as well as Earthblood. For those of you might be curious about Flesh to Stone, I think Flesh to Stone isn't bad against Norsca. If Norsca goes with Skin Wolves, if Norsca goes with Marauder Horsemen, as well as honestly Berserkers and units like that, Flesh to Stone helps negate a lot of that damage. Earthblood, of course, always good as a heal. Life Bloom, Global Heal, nice. Power Stone, more Winds of Magic, all very, very good. Now, obviously the mortars, while being the centerpiece here of the unit I'm trying to work around, are not the only missile pressure. We do have two units of Outriders out on the flank, two counteract Mammoths, and in this odd situation, we're actually going to be countering a Frostworm with them, hopefully, and Fimir. Of course, Fimir are a major threat. And then singly Pistoliers because I had some points left over, and I didn't want more infantry. Finally, we do have 4 units of Knights of the Blazing Sun, a very potent unit in this matchup, because they can really just, well, they get a bonus versus a lot of units on the roster for Norsca. Norsca has a lot of fire vulnerable troops. Of course, Ice Trolls, the Ice Wolves, the Frostworm, of course, the Skin Wolves. So really a massive chunk of the Norscan roster is vulnerable to fire. And stack that on top of the fact that these guys are magic resistant, which makes them more resistant to Fimir, and they are a beautiful unit in this matchup. So we've got 4 units of Knights of the Blazing Sun. Now for my opponent, he's gone with a bit of an alternate build, a build I think is in many ways kind of normal, but at the same time he's got some weird choices in here that I think are pretty cool, and it's nice to see some of these units because you don't see them enough. So for his Lord, my opponent's brought Wulfric to Wander, and Wulfric is coming in on a Mammoth. Not too surprising, even against Empire, just because of the huge HP pool, you can risk it for the biscuit there. He's got Foe Seeker, he's got Xifeng, Fight or Die, and Hunter of Champions. Obviously, absolute beefcake. Very dangerous Lord. Lord of Shadows, Balefiend down here with Enfeebling Foe, as well as Penumbral Pendulum. Of course, this guy is great because he also provides Armor Sundering, so you can actually beef up your Berserkers, make them do a bit more damage. Front line composed entirely of Zerks, with 2 Marauders, sort of making a screening force on the flanks. Single unit of Spears here in the back. as a reserve, and then 2 Marauder Hunters with throwing axes, so looking to sort of pulp any armored troops I might have. We also do have a Marauder Ice Wolf Chariot, so this guy does have Frostbite, so you can snare units, prevent them from escaping, very potent potentially. We do have the Beasts of Tashanar, as well as Norscan Ice Wolves here to pursue and shut down Skirmish Cav, and of course that Frostworm. Frostworm is kind of a cool unit because it's kind of, and we can see that the mortar opening up, and already these Berserkers have lost about 1400 HP in a single volley from that mortar wagon. So we can see how against an optimal unit it can do a lot of hurt. But the Frostworm, pretty cool unit, gets Frostbite as well as the Chilling Aura. I almost call it the Freezing Aura. But this debuffs enemy speed. You can drop enemy speed by a total of 72%, which is insane. You can essentially nuke Light Cav down to infantry speeds and very much prevent them from escaping. And when I say infantry speeds, I mean slow infantry speeds. Regardless, we're going to push the Beast Leaders here, looking to get some cheeky fire into these Marauder Zerks. And in the meantime, the mortar is going to continue pulverizing these very unfortunate Marauder Berserks, dropping them by another 1,000 or so HP, so definitely paying for itself. Now, in the meantime, Outriders here pushing forward, looking to get some cheeky shots, but I do see the incoming Ice Wolves, and I am not going to stick around to let them get me, and so we're going to turn around. Outriders are a bit slower than dogs, so you don't want to get caught, and we're going to run for the hills. In the meantime, Mortar Wagon is still pounding away. Unfortunately, Beast Leaders here slip off a micro, get caught by the Marauders, so we're going to be forced to flee. But my opponent here does pull back his wolves because he doesn't want to get caught by the Knights of the Blazing Sun. Now, unfortunately here, big misplay. I decided to take the fight here with Boris against the Frostworm, thinking that this will be easy peasy, and this was kind of a stupid decision on my part. Enfeebling Foe immediately goes down. You can already see Wulfric marching over, looking to cast his own debuff, of course, Hunter of Champions. So while this looks incredibly impressive of a duel, it's in fact a pretty disastrous engagement, and Boris is going to get absolutely pulped. He's already down by about 1,000 HP, getting wrecked. Seafang goes down, Doggo's going in, while I'm distracted over here, trying to countercharge the Marauder Ice Wolves with a Knights of the Blazing Sun. My opponent is in the meantime shutting down Boris, and I didn't realize Boris would go down this quickly, so he's almost already absolutely pulped. Meantime, though, Doggo's here trying to get in. A few Outriders go down, but they managed to largely pull back. And now the Knights of the Blazing Sun are coming in hot and heavy on these dogs. Unfortunately, Boris here just getting pulverized. Earthblood goes down. This was something I didn't want to do. I didn't want to waste a heal on Boris, but I wanted to keep him alive. I realized things were going very south. I'm going to try to heal him there. Knights of the Blazing Sun, in the meantime, over pursuing into these Marauder Ice Wolves. And my opponent here gets into the back line, gets into the cookie jar onto my Marauder, or onto my War Wagon with his dogs. And now, if this was a unit of spears stacked on top of a unit of, for example, or not a unit of mortars, the crew would probably be routed almost immediately. They wouldn't stick around. But they're war wagons, so they actually stick around. We can see the Knights of the Blazing Sun pile in. Second unit piles into these Norscan Ice Wolves, and the wagon is intact. The wagon's lost like 700 or so HP. Obviously, Beasts of Tashanar are very specialized anti-large unit, doing a lot of work. In comes Wulfric, also trying to smack down him, and yet these guys are still standing. War Wagon is still sticking around, and now it's going to pull away and escape. In the meantime, Knights of the Blazing Sun pulped the Light Cav, so very good stuff there as the War Wagon flees for dear life. Now, over here, big misplay. Knights of the Blazing Sun got pulverized by the Berserks. Definitely not great. However, these Knights of the Blazing Sun trying to fight it out with the Marauder Ice Wolf Chariot, not entirely succeeding. Well, over here, Frostworm is chasing Boris, but this was a bit of a lucky moment for me, because as the Frostworm is pursuing Boris, Boris is huge, has a massive speed debuff right now, so he's not really moving away very quickly. That means the Outriders can actually stay on this Frostworm and keep pecking away at him and knocking down his HP pool, so that is a big saving grace. In the meantime, Pistol Leaders here wailing on Wulfric. The Wulfric with his 70 armor and missile resist, because keep in mind he is a lord, he does still get missile resist. He's not going to take a huge amount of damage. Spears, though, chevroned up, veteraned up, are going to hold pretty well here against these Marauders. I believe these guys would potentially even outfight these Marauders, to be quite honest with you guys. And Knights of the Blazing Sun here, doing some cleanup, chasing off the Hounds. These guys, unfortunately, absolutely pulverized, but the Frostworm being pursued by those very angry Outriders. Well, over here, Knights of the Blazing Sun crush the Marauder Ice Wolf Chariot and run it down before plowing into the enemy skirmisher line. The Marauder Hunters, with throwing axes, just getting overwhelmed, losing quite a bit of HP and models there. As Knights of the Blazing Sun just continue bouncing around, getting hit there by an Enfeebling Foe, I believe. I'm not sure what's hitting them there. Yep, there we go. Enfeebling Foe down. But honestly, with their charge bonus, they don't care too much. Well, here, Wulfric pursuing this War Wagon. This War Wagon would have been wrecked by those dogs if this had been a normal War Wagon. Keep in mind that if this had been just a normal mortar, and Wulfric would have just been able to overrun it, but he can't catch him. Wulfric's got 56 speed to the 50 on the chariot, so they are slower, but they're not slow enough. Meantime, Bislayer's whittling him down. Boris recovers due to the heroic efforts of the Outriders, and he's coming back in. Outriders going to shut down this Frostworm hard. And over here, the Balefiend gets caught out in the open and shut down by Knights of the Sun. And, of course, their magic resist is going to come into play here once again. Very useful unit. Over here, the Mortars continue running for dear life. They are active where Wulfric is tired, so they're going to have a bit of a speed edge here. And they're just going to keep trucking away. And obviously, we're keeping this unit alive. And we're wasting Wulfric's time. Wulfric could be in this pocket here. He could be helping deal with the Knights of the Living Sun, deal with these spears, break him faster. We actually use Flesh to Stone there, which is going to waste my opponent's time more. Obviously, they're not going to, at this point, they break, but still waste a lot of my opponent's time, which is a big win. Outriders here still pursuing the Frostworm. At this stage, I think I should have been pulling it back. And I am, in fact, going to do that shortly, but I should have done that earlier. In the meantime, Berserkers here, as well as the Fimir Balefiend, slugging it out. With Knights of the Living Sun, in goes Boris. I really should have been cycle charging more in this pocket, but I didn't, and so the big slip up on Micro there. We do get the terror out on the Fimir Balefiend, removing him from play and sort of getting rid of him. Pistolers now out of ammo. Knights of the Living Sun, though, shifting around, and now the Mortars back online, and they are ready to rain some righteous hell down on those Norscan fiends. And we can see the first shots popping off. Was that like a fake shot? It looked like a puff of smoke went off. But they're going to be able to start wailing on, there we go, projectiles flying in on this Norscan scum. And against this sort of blob, if I can land a few good hits, we will be in business. Unfortunately, we're not landing the greatest hits there. One does clip the Marauder Berserkers, but my opponent's kind of flailing around here in the pits, and so we're not able to land the best hits. But, you know, we're trying. Now, one big misplay here on my part was that I really should have, as Wulfric, and you can see a nice little clipping shot there. I really should have been pushing these guys way closer to the engagement. Pushed them. I could have pushed these guys like right up to here and been shooting from almost point blank, at which point Mortars are laser accurate. They're incredibly accurate at close range. So over here, Boris does clean up the Fimir. Knights of the Blazing Sun do clean up these Marauder Berserkers. And these Pistolers dive in, doing some damage onto the Marauder Hunters. Obviously, they do not want to stick around in this fight. I was trying to get a quick rout, but that's not going to happen. They do pick up a few kills, but unfortunately with their very low HP and rather low leadership, Pistolers really can't stand in that sort of engagement. That said, Outriders still have some good HP. They're going to be chunking Wulfric. Wulfric's lost about 20% of his HP pool, and so we're trying to chip that down further. And trying to zone them away is tough for Norse, because these guys do have 130 range. 130 armor, that would be pretty darn impressive. Mortar, though, chipping away. It's now up to about halfway to its veterancy. Once again, I really should have been pushing this unit forward, shunting it closer to the engagement. Balance of power is about dead even, where before it was very much out of my favor. And I'm sort of rallying my troops, regrouping for an Earthblood. I have no intention of throwing in the towel, and want to keep fighting this one out as best I can. I have so much ammo left to use up. Over half on the Outriders, over half on the War Wagon, and looking to use it. So we drop a beautiful Earthblood here, getting a heal on all these Knights, bring them up to some level of healing. Perhaps not the best, but, you know, we recover some HP there. And we're going to be able to re-engage. Mortars, in the meantime, continue raining death and destruction on the Norskins. Every mortar doing about a couple hundred damage if it hits. Now over here, the Outriders almost get caught, but we do countercharge with a blob of Knights of the Bleeding Sun. And of course, the Spears on the move are not going to have a good day. So they just get demolished there. In the meantime, we can see a Seafang going down, but Seafang against Cav is not the best thing ever, really. It's going to clip some of these guys, I believe, slowing down these Knights of the Blazing Sun. They're still fast enough to outrun infantry. And while an incredibly cool cinematic, it isn't going to do very much for my opponent. Boris, in the meantime, is sort of skirting the top of this map, or top of the engagement here, looking for an opening, looking to dive into some juicy target, and is going to find it, because this missile infantry is getting detached. Now, these Marauders here, roided up with rage, of course, are going to be a bit of a problem. Boris, though, is going to come down from on high, and you can see these guys actually rout from proximity. I drop another Earthblood, and this might have been a bit wasted, because a lot of these units have hit, at least some of these units, these guys have hit healing cap, but good to get some heals. Honestly, at this stage of the game, most of my stuff has hit heal cap, except for like Spears and the War Wagon, so pretty irrelevant stuff. So, we do get the massive charge here. Now, Wulfric, being very tired at this stage, despite popping Fight or Die, is not actually going to be... Wulfric is not going to be really delivering those devastating charges. A Mammoth's charge at the beginning of the game can annihilate, like, half a unit of cap. Later in the game, when the Mammoth's tired and doesn't get meaty charges, it's kind of meh. So, we managed to sort of skirt around, rout off the Marauder Hunters. Boris down here is also very tired, so we do want to escape. We don't want to get caught by Wulfric, but my opponent does cast Hunter Champions on Boris, looking to get that attack. The Wulfric gets distracted by a Knight. Meantime, my Cav continues rampaging around, while the Mortar is simply taking its time. It's now almost reached the Chevron, and once again, I really should have had it closer to the fight, just pushed it to point blank, and blasted those Marauders to Kingdom Come. Now, over here, the Knights of the Blazing Sun are going to sit sort of tight out of range. We do still have a decent chunk of HP, you can see, unfortunately, missing there. Once again, should have pushed these guys closer, taking advantage of that mobility. But we do get a nice little charge there. These Outriders over here juking around the Marauder Hunters. And we do get a few mortar near misses there. Unfortunately, just not close enough. I really should have rolled them closer. And finally, I do realize and start pushing forward. Boris diving in on these Marauder Hunters. My opponent definitely getting flustered. At this point, he's lost over half the HP on Wulfric. Or about half HP. So I'm just trying to pressure him with the Outriders continuously. The other unit of Outriders still in very good shape over here. Wulfric dropping to about half now. Pistoliers being used for cleanup. Mortars are, as you can see, pushing close. And at this stage, my opponent decides to GG out. I think the mortars, once they reach that close range, would have just been able to decimate my opponent's remaining infantry. Now, was this a supreme highlight of the mortars devastating an entire army? No, and I don't think you will ever get that with this unit. Maybe if your opponent played incredibly badly, or built incredibly badly, as some faction. Like, I don't know. I don't even know what faction would allow you to just devastate them. You need to fight against like a Wood Elves with like a very melee-centric line, and just whittle them down over time. There aren't many factions that are very squishy and expensive. That don't also have like artillery, because obviously against zombies this wouldn't be a bad unit, but against zombies you're then dealing, or against zombies from the Vampire Coast, you're then dealing with artillery. Same thing with the actually against Vampire Coast. If you can shut down enemy artillery play, this might not be that bad of a unit. But what I really want to highlight in this game is how difficult it can be to shut down the War Wagon with the mortar. In that early stage of the battle, if my opponent had, if I'd tried to bring a normal mortar plus spears, my opponent would have shut this unit down almost immediately. I would have gotten like 2 or 3 volleys out before the unit got in. My opponent would have run it down. Wulfric would have been freed up to do whatever the hell he pleased, chasing my other units around. And I'd be down a mortar. And who cares? The spears are there to support unit there, but they're not going to protect that mortar. They're not going to shut down Wulfric. They're not even going to shut down hounds if your opponent is very forceful about pressuring their dogs to get on top of your artillery crew. Spears won't even stop that. So, in my opinion, the War Wagon can be used for these very mobile strategies. In this strategy, we've had a lot of moving parts. We had a lot of agility. We had tools for everything else. We had tools to counter enemy skirmish a little bit, as well as to counter enemy big monsters. We had tools to clean up the infantry, to protect against the enemy large. So we had tools. And the War Wagon mortar helped apply that ranged pressure. It helped apply that pressure to some rather valuable infantry that otherwise, in a practical, keep in mind, otherwise in a practical engagement, you'd, for example, your Knights of the Blazing Sun are tied down dealing with the Marauder Hunters. They're going to be trying to shut down these Norscan Ice Wolves. They're dealing with all of this crap initially. They don't have time or the opening to engage, especially on the Marauder Berserkers a lot of the time. And so I think being able to get those pot shots with the War Wagon was nice. Now, you could say, and honestly, this is really the main problem here, is that you could use Marauder, and I probably would still prefer them. Outrider grenade launchers, I think, would be stronger in this situation. They are cheaper, they will do more damage, and they will actually butcher dogs pretty effectively. But I think this demonstrates how the War Wagon can be utilized. In matchups where you wouldn't use a mortar, you can make use of a War Wagon. I think it's a side grade 2 unit that actually opens up new possibilities. I also think that if you went for a fully like disgusting kite build, you could absolutely do that with the War Wagon mortar. And I think if you're fighting against a faction like, for example, Wood Elves, this gives you some opportunity where if your opponent goes with a more aggressive build, you've got a little bit of survivability, you've got a little bit of flexibility, you've got the opening to maneuver, but you do still have that range advantage where if you try to bring Outrider grenade launchers against Wood Elves and they go with a shooting build, they will gun you down. You will never get value out of those grenade launchers. But you, with the War Wagon mortar, you can get that value. So I think in matchups like that, this unit is not bad. I think the unit's definitely a niche. It definitely is competing with a very contested spot on the Empire roster because obviously Outrider grenade launchers, the War Wagon mortar, the Knights of Blazing Sun, Reichsguard, Empire Knights, Pistoliers, those units are all amazing at annihilating trash infantry. So, or squishy infantry, I should say. It's honestly trash infantry, but flimsy infantry. So, yes, the unit has a lot of competition. It might be a smidgen overpriced, but keep in mind it is, or perhaps you could use like a round of ammo more or 2 rounds of ammo more. But I think that really the unit is in a pretty good spot. It's just a very niche unit, and I don't think it's bad. And I think in this game it showed just how well it can get away, even though it might not have racked up the most impressive kill count or damage count. I think it did a good chunk of damage, a couple thousand damage to the infantry, and distracted Wulfric for a massive chunk of the game. So I just wanted to show it off. Because this was not necessarily the best game I had with it, but it was the game that I thought highlighted its mobility. Now, for the rest of the army, especially against a faction where you wouldn't traditionally bring it. And I actually had some games against Beastmen where I utilized the War Wagon and found it to be usable there, where you would never bring static artillery, or almost never bring static artillery against Beastmen, in my opinion. So the fact that you could pull it off there, I think is pretty cool. But yeah, Boris obviously did pretty well once he got freed from the Frostworm's grasp. Got completely annihilated early on. Massive misspend on my part. Almost cost me the entire game there, really. Spears did really well at holding. Can't expect much more from him. Jade Wizard, good heals. Nice Blazing Sun, amazing as always. Pistoliers and Outriders, amazing as always. But they actually gained chevrons. You can see 2 chevrons in the Knights of Blazing Sun, 1 on the each Outrider, 1 on the Pistoliers. Just an absolutely amazing job from all of them. Unfortunately, War Wagon didn't gain a chevron, but it did work. My opponent's build, definitely a bit of a risky build. Almost paid off with the Frostworm. I really think that the main disadvantage to this build was the lack of anti-large. My opponent did not have tools, really, to shut down my cavalry, or just didn't have enough tools. I honestly would probably cut the Marauder Hunters and replace them with something else. Not entirely sure. I'd probably go with Marauder Horsemen if you don't want to go with like a Skinwolf build and you're not looking to get into down and dirty in these big cav fights, essentially, with Skinwolves versus Empire Cav, and you're not going with a Fimir blob. I would really cut the Marauder Hunters, maybe downgrade these chariots to a normal Marauder chariot, and then get rid of these guys, replace them with Marauder Horsemen, and get a few units of those on the field just to chip down enemy heavy cav and that sort of thing. And those guys can also be used in melee. You can use them to shut down enemy skirmish cav. You can use them to shut down enemy backlines. You can use them to shoot at a War Wagon and whittle it down, that sort of thing. But regardless, we'll play the Bartlow there. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you found it fun and entertaining, and hopefully it showed that the War Wagon's not a total piece of crap, even if perhaps it wasn't the most amazing showing. Yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. There are definitely some more games coming up in the near future, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.